You face a difficult task, a project that requires effort. There's a sense of resistance, a feeling of being frozen. We have been taught to label this feeling as laziness, to see it as a failure of discipline. This entire narrative is wrong. The struggle to begin is not a moral failing, it is a biological one. Deep in the brain is a system designed for a single purpose, to keep you safe. This is the limbic system. A key part of it, the amygdala, acts as the brain's threat detector. It scans for danger. It does not know the difference between a physical predator and a challenging task that brings up feelings of anxiety, self-doubt, or potential failure. It just senses discomfort. When it senses this discomfort, it activates an avoidance response. The resistance you feel is your nervous system signaling danger, creating an impulse to do anything other than the thing causing the feeling. Procrastination is not a time management problem. It is an emotional regulation problem. You are not avoiding the task. You are avoiding the negative emotions associated with the task. The first step is to stop assigning blame. You are not lazy. You have a protective system that is calibrated for a world that no longer exists. This resistance has a clear mechanical function. The brain is designed to be efficient. It prioritizes immediate safety and comfort over long-term abstract rewards. A difficult task promises a delayed payoff, but it presents immediate emotional discomfort. The brain weighs these two options. In many cases, it chooses to eliminate the immediate discomfort. This creates a cycle. An individual decides to start a task, feels the resistance, and retreats into a less demanding activity. This retreat is rewarded with a feeling of relief. The brain learns that avoidance is a solution for discomfort. Willpower is often ineffective against this learned response. This is because the problem is not a lack of force, but a miscalculation of threat. The battle is not against the task itself, but against the brain's protective instinct. To break the cycle, we must first understand what the brain perceives as a threat. The resistance is usually a reaction to one of three hidden fears. Understanding them is the beginning of control. The first is the fear of imperfection. The mind creates an idealized standard for the final product. It then anticipates the gap between this perfect vision and the messy reality of a first draft. This gap feels like failure before the work has even begun. To avoid the discomfort of an imperfect start, the brain chooses not to start at all. Inaction preserves the fantasy of a flawless outcome. It protects the ego from the reality of the process. The second is the fear of judgment. Here, self-worth becomes attached to the outcome of the task. A potential failure in the work is interpreted as a fundamental failure of the self. The stakes become existential. The brain reacts defensively. Delaying the task becomes a form of self-protection. The work is never finished. It can never be judged. If it cannot be judged, the self remains safe. The third is the fear of the process itself. Sometimes, the fear is not about the outcome, but about the work required to get there. The task may be boring, confusing, or mentally strenuous. The brain is wired for immediate reward. A difficult process offers only delayed gratification. Procrastination becomes the act of choosing a short-term mood improvement over long-term progress. The limbic system wins a battle against the rational prefrontal cortex. The brain chooses the immediate, easy reward. So, how do we work with the brain's wiring, not against it? The answer is not to find a source of motivation. It is to use small, strategic actions that calm the brain's threat response and make starting feel safe. The first strategy is to reduce the commitment to 2 minutes. The goal is not to complete the project, but to work on it for only 120 seconds. This commitment is too small to register as a significant threat. It does not trigger the avoidance response, but an object in motion tends to stay in motion. These 2 minutes often create enough behavioral momentum to continue. Resistance is bypassed, and the work itself begins to pull you forward. The second strategy is to shrink the target. A large project can trigger overwhelm and paralysis. The solution is to deconstruct it into absurdly small, concrete actions. Write a book is an overwhelming idea. Open a new document is not. Your first step should be so simple that it feels illogical not to do it. This shrinks the task below the threshold of fear. It builds a sense of control from the very first action. The third is to create a starter ritual. The brain thrives on automation. Ritual is a sequence of actions performed before starting a difficult task. This could be clearing your desk, pouring a glass of water, and putting on a specific playlist. This ritual acts as a signal. It tells the brain that a transition to focused work is occurring. By automating the beginning of the process, you reduce the decision fatigue and willpower required to start. The fourth strategy is self-forgiveness. You will procrastinate again. This is inevitable. The most damaging part of the cycle is not the initial delay. It is the shame and guilt that follow. This guilt adds another layer of negative emotion to the task, which reinforces future avoidance. The way to break this pattern is to remove the emotional consequence. When you notice you have procrastinated, acknowledge it without judgment. I procrastinated. That is in the past. What is the single smallest step I can take now? Forgiveness cuts the emotional link to past avoidance and allows you to simply begin again. The struggle to start is not a sign that you are broken. It is a sign that the work you are attempting is meaningful. It pushes you to your limits. It is a sign that you care about the result. The goal is not to become a person who feels no resistance. The goal is to become a person who can feel resistance and take a small step anyway. You do not need to win a war against your brain. You only need to win the first, smallest battle. The moment you understand procrastination not as a personal failure, but as a predictable neurological response, is the moment you gain control over it.